Now, here in the early part of the 21st century, you hear it everywhere. You're starting to hear it everywhere. The same need to acknowledge and repudiate. You got to acknowledge all the crap out of the past, the economic choices and what that ended up. You got to acknowledge the history of supporting dictatorships throughout Latin America, South America, crushing civil rights, while at home America is sitting there trying to tell everybody that they got freedom. You got to admit that Vietnam was a complete failure, and it was the wrong policy, foreign policy, in the first place. It's the incorrect way to go, according to our historical background, America's background. We actually should have been supporting the Vietnamese to take back their country and kick out the French. Because that's our history. Kicking out the king, kicking out the foreign government, so we could have it ourselves. That's our history. They were doing the same thing. We should have helped them. And by helping them, we would have influenced them in their governmental setup, economic setup, freedoms. Because, we had the influence. We had the discussion. We worked together. Everywhere you're getting it, even at home here in the U.S., when you got to acknowledge that the Confederacy was a complete, just an abomination against humanity. It needed to be destroyed. There is no defense for slavery. There's no defense for the Confederacy. And again, you're saying that because of your Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Well, you can't be having slaves. That's ignorance. That's hypocrisy. And it was completely brutal. It was a crime against humanity. Come on, the stories are horrific. So we got to acknowledge the past. The Confederacy had no right to exist. It was completely correct to destroy and knock down the system of slavery. You got to acknowledge and you got to repudiate. And you say, in our history books, just that very statement, Confederacy had no validity to exist. They were a crime against humanity. And the United States has dedicated itself to not endorse, support, create slavery. Period. No, never again. Those type of things. You got to acknowledge and you got to repudiate. And when you acknowledge and repudiate and understand the whole thing of the Confederacy, of course you're going to tear down every statue of a Confederate general or Confederate soldier, Confederate something. There aren't any statues of Nazi generals in Germany. And the Nazis and the Confederacy are the same. A gross brutality against humanity. So we acknowledge We repudiate it. We put it in our history books. We tear down all the statues and crap trying to keep it at some kind of reference. All those guys went out and died, the South went out and died to try and keep people in slavery. They fought and died to try and keep people in slavery. See, it's absurd. It's not heroic. It's a gross error. But we finally acknowledge it. We finally agree and say, that's it. From here on out, see, now you've let something go. You drop some of the past of that's holding people back from the 21st century. You can't keep holding on to this crap of maybes and we could of our interpretations. You got to get it cleanly stated. The Vietnam was a complete failure and it was completely hypocritical and incorrect foreign policy by the United States. Acknowledge it, repudiate it, and the America will not invade another country who's trying to assert their own freedom from some foreign government or a conquering army or from someplace else. The people want to get their country back. That's the type of thing Americans understand from our history. We threw the king out. We threw the foreign government out. Okay. In 1953, Eisenhower overthrows the government of Iran. And he puts in a dictator, the Shah of Iran, this buffoon, this glutton. And the U.S. spends the money to train a terrorist police force, the SAVAK, S-A-V-A-K, whose mission is to kill and torture and murder off Iranian citizens who complain that their government got taken over and shoved out by the USA. For 26 years, the Iranian people suffer under that. Eisenhower started, but plenty of other presidents came through and kept it going. The U.S. created a dictatorship to crush human rights. 1954, Eisenhower again organizes the overthrow of the government of Guatemala because American corporation, United Fruit Company, didn't like it. Didn't like the way it was getting treated. Wanted to have even bigger control and domination over the people of Guatemala. So Eisenhower sent in the CIA and whatnot, and they overthrew the government. And what's the next thing? Again, the U.S. puts into power a military junta. These criminal guys. The Americans come down again and train and supply a brutal military force of that junta, to support that junta. Well, of course, the Guatemalan people rise up and revolt about all this. Here's America saying it's got the freedoms, man. We got the freedoms. And then turn around and goes down to Guatemala and puts in a military dictatorship that kills and crushes dissent. human rights. We got to acknowledge it, that it was incorrect, completely wrong, and we repudiate it and say, you're not going to do that type of foreign policy at all, anywhere. And in fact, throughout from Mexico to all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, America is going to turn around here and start supporting and actually kind of insisting that the countries we deal with generate some freedom of the press, free speech, labor unions, so that people can finally get a decent wage and have some bargaining power against the big corporations that's crushing them for pennies a day. Because that's what Americans are about. We're about getting the rights and being, able to talk, able to read a variety of news that's trying to be presented honestly and pretty correctly about what's happening. That we have people that can be politicians, they can actually be people among us who want to try and be a representative, a senator, something like that. So we got to endorse that throughout Mexico all the way south. And in exchange, we're going to be giving them all sorts of great deals of jumping ahead with solar power, other type of alternative power, stuff that's made in America, and helped engineering-wise for all those countries down there to be part of it too. So they can benefit economically and make it easier to come in to the 21st century without having to use oil and coal and all that poison stuff. And that's all because we changed course. We acknowledged, we repudiated, and we set a different course. And again, that course is about cooperation. And surprise, surprise, you're going to have great economic success. But you got a big goal, you better get going pretty soon here. Because China is already making big inroads and really trying to cut into Latin America, South American markets. And they don't care about civil rights. And, China doesn't care about requesting or kind of liking to see or making any effort about human rights. This is China. They still have public executions, like Saudi Arabia. Real primitive crap. Dark Ages stuff. So we better get down there and start. They're in our neighborhood. They're close. We better get down there and start straightening out the history. Acknowledge the mistakes and the brutality that the U.S. did throughout that whole area. Supporting dictatorships in Nicaragua, supporting dictatorships in San Salvador, supporting and creating Manuel Noriega in Panama, and paying him off for millions of bucks. And his exchange was, he helped Reagan land shipments of weapons in Panama. And then in exchange, the USA, and Reagan did it, allowed him to ship cocaine into the USA. Be part of that whole thing. And make pots of money. So another one, you acknowledge the complete failure and fraud of the drug war. Doesn't work. We keep hearing people after they come out of office saying, that drug war, it just doesn't work. We should stop it. But they didn't do anything about it, and they didn't have the balls to do anything about it when they were in office. Well, it's time to acknowledge that it is a complete disaster. It's stupid. It's a moralistic crap to try and force people to have only certain values and do certain things. It takes away your freedoms and your responsibility. When you got the freedom of access to drugs and alcohol, gambling, those type of things, prostitution, it's up to you. You got to be responsible. You got to be responsible for all of us, for our safety. If you're getting access to alcohol and legal access to some drugs or all drugs or whatnot, we'll figure it out. But the deal is, the drug war itself, a complete failure. And the thing to do, of course, is to legalize. We have to run the market. There is a market. There's a multi-billion-dollar market. We run it, not criminal enterprises. You don't have a choice anymore. That's it. We run it. And stop giving billions and billions of dollars to criminal enterprise. And having all this screwy stuff happen, like Reagan using the illegal drug thing to import cocaine into the U.S. so he could make extra cash in his Iran-Contra scam. See, that stuff's got to end. And you don't have a choice, but we got to run it. You got to have education. I think everybody's just going to run out and be a junkie? Of course not. That's ludicrous. That's right-wing hysteria. You're going to need education, though. You got to be informing everyone. Now, this is what it is. This is what the effect is. This is its potential for physical addiction. Real addiction or not. You got to be honest and straightforward about it. But also here is the education about your responsibility to all of us. You're going to get this freedom of access at some age that we specify and all that stuff. But because of that freedom of access, you got a really big responsibility to all of us. You don't cause injury. Type of thing. But we have to run it. We have to run it. We acknowledge it's been a complete stupid failure based on all this moralistic crap of moralism, really. And then making all crazy excuses otherwise and get around it. All they did was feed billions and billions of dollars year after year to criminal enterprises. We can't keep doing that. That's stupid. You can't force a whole morality to say nobody's going to drink alcohol. Nobody's going to gamble. Nobody's going to do drugs. Nobody's going to go to a prostitute. That's over with. You throw all out that. You got to just throw all that dark age stuff away. You got to face reality. And the reality is we got to run it, not criminal enterprise. We have to run it. Legal oversight, constant auditing, the whole works, age access controls, but we run it. And we pull billions and billions of dollars away from criminals of all types. And that's the reality. Because we've acknowledged it, then we repudiate it and say, we ain't going to keep doing it. We're shutting it down. Shutting down this fake war on drugs. We're going to close it down. We're going to close down, audit first. We're going to audit the DEA. See what they really spent their money on, who they really contacted, what were they really doing. And then we are also deleting the DEA. Wiping it out. Waste of your money. At least over 60 billion you're wasting on just feeding their paychecks. And the drugs are still here, and criminal gangs are still making profit, and police are still acting like police state terrorists because of it. Oh, it's the drug war excuse to break into homes, shoot everybody. It's drugs, danger. Bullshit. It's been a complete failure. So we acknowledge it and we repudiate it. We're not doing that anymore. There ain't going to be any prohibition. It's going to be up to you to have the responsibility of that access. And that's where we're going to go. Now we're going to see a huge drop in criminal enterprise money. That'll be interesting. Where has all this billions and billions and billions been going? Who's been having it? When suddenly it's going to be, got to put it into something else. That'll be interesting. But anyway, the main point of this whole thing of the 21st century is because of the internet, because of access to information, communication, it's time to make a change. You have arrived at the crossroads. It's time to make a change. This is the opportunity. And to make that change is to clarify all the crap, the cause and the effect of that old system that we're leaving behind, the Dark Age stuff. We acknowledge the crap and we repudiate it. That's not what we're going to do in the future. And so you free yourself. You've made a clean slate here. You said, that's what it was. No more quibbling or discussion about it. That's what we're going to say it was. That's how we're presenting it in our history books and whatnot. And then you can move on into the 21st century with some clarity, resolution, adherence to that Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence. Oh yeah. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal,